Hi, everybody. Wonderful to have you here. I'm just going to put a little bit of a proviso on here, is that I am in Queensland and we do have a storm going. So if I drop out, I will absolutely come back as quick as I can, or Tiana may take over. So just to let you know, if that happens, hang on the line. Okay, so today we're going to talk about STP Phase 2 in IAM, in the IAM STP reporting. So it is starting, so it's a really big topic coming up, and yeah, let me hopefully fill you in on some information. So my name is Deborah Thompson. I am a BAS agent and have worked with Gov Reports for quite a few years now. I am definitely an advocate for the program, and it's great to be here. And we, of course, have the wonderful Tiana Tran with us. Hi, Tiana.
Hi, Deborah. Hi, everyone.
Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself, Tiana?
Okay, well, I've been with Gov Reports since the beginning, and although I have been at the beginning, but I can only answer software questions only. Deborah will be answering any of your technical questions on the point of view of the SDP, the ATO, and of course the compliance process, but I can only come from the software point of view.
Well, thank you. That's good. Tiana is the person I usually go to, and then Sandeep, I know, is in the background, and he's the other person I gravitate to for advice. So our agenda today is having a look at the IAM software. We're going to talk about single touch payroll, what it is, and I'm sure everybody would be aware of it now if you do have, you are paying employees. We're going to look at what the changes are, how you can prepare for those changes even before it starts, and then using the Gov Reports IAM, the STP reporting, and also using a CSV file to import the information, and to let you know how that is going to work as well. So let's begin. I am assuming that most of you probably know this, but I just again sort of want to reiterate it. The IAM STP reporting module is a simple standalone payroll. It's for people with generally with simple payroll requirements, but it is really a wonderful product. And you do have the option, of course, to import, as I said, the CSV file, or you can manually enter it, or you do have the facility to roll over as well. And there's no limitation on the number of employees, which is really great, I think, especially for the annual cost of $99 a year. So it is really a great product if you have, you know, if it suits your needs. We then have another product called IAM Business Ledger, which, if you like, is a small accounting software. It's a business ledger, and so it's going to have all of your things like sales and payroll, receipts, invoices, bank statements, all those sorts of things that you are going to need in your business software. So it does give you the whole box and dice, if you like. And you can, of course, do all of your reports, your tax file numbers, your activity statements, your single touch payroll, and your business returns. And of course, your BAS agent and accountant are able to work with you with both of these products for your lodgements if that's what you need. And this product, because it does have all of the accounting in it, is $149 per annum. Again, it's a really great products for great prices. Just to let you know that there is help also available. Of course, you can always ring up Gov Reports for support, which is great. I do it all the time. But there is a knowledge base available on the website so that you can go to those, and you'll see that there's little videos of telling you how to do things, because a lot of times just reading a set of instructions doesn't always do it for you, but it allows you these little videos to see where you have to go, where you need to move that mouse to. So let's start with single touch payroll. So it started in Australia in 2018. It was talked about for quite a while before that. And then employers with under 19 employees began reporting in July 2019. Now at this stage, every person who pays wages or every employer who pays wages needs to be informing the ATO of those wages paid on or before they actually pay them. The STP report actually gives the tax department the wages information, tax information, and super information, so that the ATO is ahead of the game where they were, 10 years ago, because they know as they go along what everybody is earning for the year and what tax they've paid. The main thing about the IAM product is you don't need to change your pay cycle. You don't need to alter anything to fit in with STP. STP is about working with your source of truth, which is the software. And you can pay people weekly, fortnightly, monthly, or that mixture of, depending on what who your employees are. And basically, the STP that we started with is now expanding, and that's what STP Phase 2 is. It is an expansion of the original information that we were sending to the ATO. We're still sending that information, but now we're going to give them more detail of it, and that's really to help us. And the idea is that ultimately it's going to cut down our reporting burden in that information that needs to go to Services Australia. For example, your child support deductions, if you do those sorts of things, or if you need termination, separation certificates, those sort of things. If you have previously had to do those for Services Australia, this expansion of single touch payroll will cut those out, and it will allow everybody in the government that needs to get the information to get the information without us as employers having to send more reports, the same information to 3 or 4 different departments. So there on the screen is some suggestions if you would like to read from the ATO's side what they are expecting for STP2. They have got reporting guidelines. There's quite a lot of information there and gives you all the detail on the key changes of what the ATO are expecting. And because allowances are also being broken up, there is quite a bit of information there on, what we call allowances, because sometimes what you and I might name something, it might be exactly the same thing, but we're calling it something different. And it might be because you're doing it through an enterprise agreement, or you're doing it through the award that you're working with. And so this is the ATO giving you that information on what they are expecting and where for you to put it. I would, of course, always suggest as well that you talk to your accountant or your BAS agent so that you can go through all of your employees and see what sort of thing you need to make sure that you are categorising correctly. So the mandatory start date by the ATO is the 1st of January, which I think is slightly inconvenient for all of us, because I'm sure some of us were trying to have Christmas holidays. But the ATO has given the leeway between the 1st of January and the 1st of March. As long as you start reporting STP2 in that time, then you are compliant. And they, of course, are also going to be quite relaxed, one hopes, in that first few months as we make sure that we do get the correct information. With IAM, I think this is a wonderful thing as well, there's no requirement for you to opt in to version 2 because it is going to be mandatory for everybody, and it will automatically upgrade to STP2 once GovReports turns it on. And maybe Sandeep or Tiana might have some dates for that to happen. I don't know. They can come in and interrupt me anytime to tell me.
Yeah, we're actually planning to turn it on from for Monday next week.
Oh, right. Oh, good. So we've got time to practice with it and take that bit of a time to make sure that we've got it right. And look, I do expect that probably some of us will in the initial stages. We might not have it absolutely correct. So that's why I would suggest that you talk to your BAS agent or your tax accountant. So GovReports will be converting all the existing employees that you've already running. So if you're using IAM STP reporting now currently in phase 1 or STP 1, then you'll find that GovReports will be moving those to their appropriate fields. Now, that's great, and you think, oh, well, then I don't have to do anything. I'll just keep using the system. And that is basically true. But what you will need to do is that there are new fields that you may need to complete. And so you need to check the information that you have and make sure that you have, filled out all of those fields. And then you do need to check that you have categorized all the payroll correctly, because previously it may be, when we say a little bit relaxed, and you go, oh, okay, it's just gross wages, and you put it in there. And now you need to look and say, is it actually what I have been calling it, or do I need to categorize it a bit more deeply? So let's look at those changes. So first of all, of course, what isn't changing? So the way you submit and lodge your STP report, so again, I'm assuming that you have been using STP1, so none of that changes. You are still going to submit it, you're still going to lodge it in exactly the same way. The types of payments that are included for STP reporting, they are still going to be included. They may just be broken up into different categories. The reports are still due on the day that you pay your employees, or in fact, you can absolutely report early. And that's a great thing about now, because we are coming up to Christmas and we may want to have a couple of weeks early, weeks off. And because GovReports are going to start STP2 next week, then you've got a chance to actually do your reporting for that 1st of January, and you can do it in December, and you can have your 2 weeks break and not be concerned about it. Your taxation and your superannuation obligations are absolutely still there. They don't change. The BMS ID, and you might say, what on earth is that? If you look at the reports, you will see that there's an ID that is and that information is going to the ATO, so that the ATO knows that it's you. It's going to stay when we roll over to STP2. It's not going to change. You're still going to be using that same BMS. So if you have noted it down, you don't need to worry about trying to get a new one. Rolling over from previous lodgements is still available. That's where you actually fill in, if you like, half the information from a previous lodgement that you've made, and so it saves on the work. And then the end of year finalisation requirements, they are going to stay the same. They are not changing. So you will find that if you have been using STP1, you probably know quite a lot already. And in fact, it's just going to be that breakup that is going to, once you've settled with that, you'll be fine. So the things that are going to change. So there's going to be additional information, and you may already have that information about your employees. You may just have it in a filing cabinet where you've stuck a file with their name and their details, and it might just be a matter of going through that information and making sure that you bring it into the software. Employment conditions, are they full-time, part-time, casual? That information hasn't been going through STP prior to STP2. And again, obviously you would know that. The income type, what sort of wages are they being paid, and therefore how are they being taxed on those wages? And then if you've got people who are working holiday, a country code is going to be required. Where are these people from? Or in fact, if you send some Australians that are residents here and you send them overseas, to work 6 months, say in Fiji, then that country code is going to be used. The disaggregation of gross, and this one might be the biggest change. And what it is basically we've been putting lots and lots of categories in STP1 into gross. We've been lumping them all together, and they are the ones that we are going to now pull apart and put them into their own sections. Salary sacrifice, if you do salary sacrifice, maybe for the directors, maybe for some of the employees, then again, that's going to be pulled out into its own area. Lump sums, so if you need to do lump sums, you know, on terminations, those sorts of things, there's a new category for that. Child support garnishes and child support deductions. This is where perhaps you have been sending reports to Services Australia, and this is where this now is going to be told to Services Australia via STP2. So it's going to cut down some of your reporting. Obviously, you still need to send Services Australia the money, but it will, you know, help you with that reporting side of it. And if you change software, you are able to bring previous BMS's IDs with you. And again, that doesn't really affect you. If you're just going from STP1 to STP2, you're not going to notice any difference. But if you were changing software, then that's when that's going to come into play. So as I mentioned, the disaggregation of gross is where the big change perhaps is coming. And it's going to be, previously, as I said, we've been putting bonuses and commissions, directors' fees, paid leave, salary sacrifice, overtime, allowances, not all allowances, but some allowances, all of that lumped into gross. And this is where we're now going to pull it out. And the first areas that you'll see on that little screenshot down at the bottom of the screen is where it says ordinary earnings, overtime earnings, bonuses and commissions, and directors' fees. You're now going to be separating those out into their particular areas. So this is where perhaps previously they might have just had one category gross. You're now going to find that you do need to separate them out. So you want to have your information for your payroll in that same sort of categories. So that's where you need to check and see that you're working the same. And overtime, I think, is a big one that perhaps we might not have expected. But now, again, and a lot of these are to do with the information that is going to Services Australia for people that are using Services Australia services. This can change what money they're being paid, basically, depending on what categories that their payroll is. Directors' fees is perhaps, you know, a big one. If you are a small business, there might only be, you know, 3 or 4 of you, and 2 of those might be people who are what is the ATO considers closely held. Now that means they have some relationship with the business, and of course directors generally do. And so this is where if you are paying directors' fees, that you now are putting them into their own section. They are being reported, and you need to make sure that you have categorized the money correctly. And you'll, again, this in the little grayed area is from the ATO's website, where it's telling you that if you're paying a remuneration to a director, whether they're working or non-working, they are going to be included in directors' fees. However, if you're paying them a bonus, then that needs to go into bonuses. And if you are paying them allowances, say a travel allowance, something like that, then again, that needs to go into its appropriate allowance. So you will need, as I said, have a look. That's one of my things, is you've got the chance to prepare by looking at all the different sorts of payments you've made to employees, and so that you make sure that you are able to categorize them correctly. Paid leave is another area that, you know, like overtime, that I perhaps didn't expect that they would pull out of gross. But there's going to be paid leave. So, for example, if the award allows your employees to cash out leave because they have a lot of leave, then that now is going to be put into its own category. If they're on defence leave, if they're being paid workers' compensation rather than their normal gross because they, you know, been hurt and they've come back to work. Again, paid parental leave. So if you have people, you know, people on maternity leave, dads on dad leave, then again, it's going to be separated out into the categories. So each time we do the payroll, we are going to have to perhaps think a little bit more, make sure that we have got it categorized. But I do believe definitely in the beginning, the ATO is going to be reasonable about, you know, where we may make a mistake because we're not used to doing that. But you'll see there with the paid leave payments, it has got the IAM software has got all of those categories there. So that's going to hopefully prompt you to put them into the correct place as well. Allowances, as I said, there's going to be, you know, there may have been previous allowances like first aid allowance or site license or a height, site allowance, I should say, or a height allowance, where people in the building construction industry may have been paid these extra allowances, but Fair Work has considered them to be ordinary times earnings, so they were put into gross. Or things where, say, a tool allowance, where they are able to claim that tool allowance back because they have bought actual tools. So they get the allowance, but then they're allowed to claim the expenses of the tools back. And so previously they were, again, all lumped into the gross because they were having the PAYG, and perhaps some of them even had super paid on them. And this is where that's still going to happen. If they were previously had PAYGW taken off them and superannuation paid on top of them, that still stays the same. It's not changing that. But what it's doing is separating them out. So people, and again, it comes back to Services Australia. So Services Australia can see what is their basic wage, if you like, and what are all these extra things that they may or may not get that may push up their wages, you know, 1 week out of the year. So as you can see, there's the cents per kilometre, there's transport payments, there's laundry, there's overtime meal allowances, domestic travel, tool allowances, qualification and certificate allowances. So for example, a pilot license who has to pay, a pilot I should say, who has to pay for a pilot's license or his renewal, then that sort of thing where they get an allowance to help them pay for that, that again is going to be separated out. A qualification allowance, so that is where they've had to go and get a qualification, which is like the pilot's license, to actually keep their jobs. The task allowance, and task allowance can be more like, say, the first aid or a leading hand, those sorts of things. Now, you may not have any of these sorts of people that are in your business that you're doing wages for, and so of course you don't need to worry about that. But if you do have these sorts of allowances that you are paying, this is where you need to separate them out. So for example, with the screenshot there from the software, you'll see that you've got all of those allowances. And when you put in, so for example, the first one in, I put in task allowance, and then I've put a leading hand allowance on there. And I've actually ticked, yes, it is subject to PAYGW and it is subject to super. Now also there's an amount there. So for example, I can set up the template so that if it's going to be $10 a week that they get as a leading hand allowance, or $35, whatever it is, you can put that in there. And so each time you go into their pays, it's going to be there, just so you don't have to, again, you don't have to think it's already there. And again, you'll see that I've put in task allowance again, which the system allows you to do that because you may have many allowances that fit in and you need to put a description. And in here I've put first aid allowance, and again I've ticked the PAYG and super. Now if they didn't have the super, obviously I could take it off, or if they had the super and not the PAYG, I would be able to not tick that, and then the system won't, you know, will work out the things as appropriately ticked. There's also things to notice with the allowances, which is I absolutely would encourage you to talk to your accountant or go to the ATO website and look at that allowance reference, because for example, they have this distinction on call during ordinary hours, it goes in as a task allowance. However, if it's on call outside of ordinary hours, so somebody's on call so that, you know, something's gone wrong, I can ring you up and you can come in. If it's outside of their ordinary hours, then it actually goes into overtime. And there are a few of those sort of little tricks, if you like, that the ATO has just made sure we're paying attention. And again, I would talk to whoever is your HR advice, whoever you get HR advice from, your tax agent, your BAS agent, of course, and look at the ATO and Fair Work website. Salary sacrifice, as I said, is changing a little bit in the fact that it has its own section. So if anyone is salary sacrificing, and of course they do need to have an agreement, so you need to make sure you've got that agreement so you know what sort of salary sacrifice is it. If it is going into their superannuation fund, it's considered to be a type S. And you'll see that there is a section there, salary sacrifice, pre-tax, voluntary contribution, which is the RESC, which is also called RESC, or it's other employee benefits, which is a salary sacrifice type O. And you don't need to know the S and the O, you just need to be able to say, is it going to the super fund or is it going to something else? And what would something else be? Something else would be like a novated lease. If you have that arrangement with your employees, or for example, if you help them buy a computer and they're paying you back, if you like, by the salary sacrifice, that sort of thing would be that type O. And again, you need to make sure that you pull it, you put it into the correct areas, and you can see that once you pick a pre-tax voluntary RESC, again, you can either do it as a fixed amount or a percentage of earnings. So if someone has, you know, signed their form and said, please take 2% of my wages for salary sacrifice, or no, please take $100 per week, per fortnight, per month, whatever it is, so that you again would be able to set that up so that it does happen each time that you do a pay run. So for example, here we've got Anita. She earns $10,000 a month and she sacrifices $2,500 into super. Now in STP phase 1, we were reporting the $7,500, which of course is 10,000 minus 2,500. But in STP phase 2, we are going to be reporting the $10,000 as the gross and the 2,500 in their own salary sacrifice section. So it's pretty simple, and the fact is just means that where perhaps you might have given them the ultimate, if you like, the ultimate gross that they were getting of 7,500, this time you're telling them that they're getting 10,000 and they're sacrificing 2.5. And again, this sort of information is the sort of information that goes to Services Australia. The child support and the garnishee. So if the tax department comes to you and says we're garnishing these wages, please make sure you pay us, or Services Australia comes to you, I should say, then again, normally there are forms that we need to fill in and report on. And in this instance, it is now going to be informed to Services Australia by the STP phase 2 reporting. So this is going to cut down a lot of you having to report. As I said, of course, you've still got to send them the money, and I assume that, you know, again, there's going to be something there for you, something there for you to tell them what you're paying. But again, they have, say, the bigger reports, that information, and again, it's going to be much more live because you're doing it as you pay someone. So that is going to be the Services Australia is going to know that straight away. Now, Tiana or Sandeep, is there anything that you would like to add, or questions, or?
We do have a questions from the floor, and that's the question is from Kim. The question is, where do we obtain the country codes to be used in the IAM? And I think Sandeep already answered these questions. Is that when you prepare the pay run, set up the employee and you select the country where they come from, it's the system will then automatically assign the code.
Thanks, Tiana. And of course, too, remember that you can go back and look at the ATO. At the moment, all of that information is in the employer's guide on the ATO website to give you a little bit of understanding and the background before. But GovReports and IAM STP seems to me to be actually, again, handling it very nicely for us, because a lot of the technical detail we don't have to have, I don't think. Tiana, is there anything else that you want to add?
No, we're all good at the moment. I think there's another question from Gay. If a person gets a salary increase and has back pay on that increase, where do you put the back pay?
Now, truthfully, I do believe it's gross, but again, I would need to go and check and make sure. So this is the sort of thing where you will have to be looking at the ATO information if you don't have it anywhere else, if you don't have a definitive guide of anything else. So I would encourage you to perhaps even download the employer's guide from the ATO website. Or maybe Sandeep has got a, sorry, Tiana, Sandeep got an opinion.
This is correct, Deborah, is that if that is the case, you know, within the software, you can always go back and edit the pay and make the additional pay or additional pay for the additional increase on each of the pay that you have done for that employee, and you know, resubmit it to the ATO, or you don't have to resubmit it to the ATO, but because the next pay that you make will be updated onto the system anyway. Having said that, the additional pay that you need to pay for the employee is on your side.
Right. So look, I found it very flexible and very friendly, and it did really allow me to change things. So I would absolutely encourage you again to, you know, take it slow through the software that first time that you're using it. And now we're going to talk about what I suggest that you actually do some preparation in this next couple of weeks where you're looking at your employees. So, Tiana, is there anything else?
We do have another questions from Marilyn. Yep. The question is, where do we put the annual leave loading? Sandeep, I believe at the moment we don't have the annual leave loading on the system, but it is on our to-do list.
I was under the impression.
Yes, Tiana. Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say I'm under the impression that it still just goes into the annual leave, the other leave category.
Yeah, that's right, Deb. That's on the reporting side. So the leave loading on the payroll module, so which is going to come, we are going to have a separate module for the leave loading, which will be on the next financial year.
Right. Okay.
So in the meantime, if you keep the records of the leave, employees leave separately, you can put onto it's part of the notes in the pay run, but it is not automatically calculated into the system.
And I would suggest as we look through it, I would be just putting another category there that says other leave, and then just put that it's the loading. That's definitely the way my brain is going to be working with it, because you can add categories each time. And we'll see that a little bit later on. Okay, shall I keep going?
Yep.
Yep, okay. So this is the perfect time, because I do think there is some preparation that you can do, that you can start looking at. So STP, obviously, as I've been talking already, is that it uses more payroll categories. It breaks them up. And so what I would suggest that you start looking at how you pay your employees. What sort of categories have you used over the last year? What sort of pays? Have you done annual leave? Have you done personal leave? Have you done carers leave? What sort of pays have been happening, and where, you know, had you previously put them? So this is where you're going to perhaps need to put your leaves together, to put your salary sacrifices together. What sort of categories have you used? So you need to come up with those, you know, your personal leave, your overtime, your director's fees. Then gather all of your employees' information. Look at their tax file declarations, their tax file number declarations, whatever you use to onboard a person, you know, where you get and say, please fill out this with your name and address and next of kin and date of birth. You need to make sure you've got their date of birth. You need to look and see, have they got any middle names? These are going to be added in to the information. You know, when did they start? Now, you may find, because you've been doing STP1, that it's actually, you've got most of it, but there may be these odd couple of things where you are going to have to put it in. An example for me is the full-time, part-time, casual. And this is where you need the tax file declaration. So gather the payroll categories that you use across the board, so across your business, and then look and see where they fit, where each of your employees fits with those, and make sure that maybe, you know, there might be categories that you need to add, as I said. So perhaps you've put annual leave, you've just sort of left it in gross, whereas now you are going to make sure that you need to define it as annual leave, and the same with the annual leave loading. When you enter the wages each week, month, fortnight, whatever it is you're doing, then you are entering the normal wages. And so you're not really doing anything different than you would be to enter your wages. And the year-to-date figures that the system is incorporating will actually be reporting the year-to-date figures. So that's, of course, the information that is being passed to the ATO. As I mentioned, the tax file declaration, it still needs to be completed. And when we go to STP2, we will find that we don't need to be sending that in. Now, I don't know that that's going to happen straight away, but eventually the idea is that you will not need to be sending this to the ATO, but you still will need the information. You still need them to fill it out and sign it. And in fact, it becomes more important, because if you move someone is casual, and then you decide they're a great person, they should come and work for you full time, and you say, I'd like you to be full time, here's the deal. You need them to fill out a new tax file declaration, because the next time you do the STP, you need to make sure that you change that category from casual to full time. So you are still going to be filling it out, but eventually you won't be needing to send it to the ATO. Now, so for example, here I've got Michelle. She gets a weekly wage, $1,600, and we've been putting it for STP1 into gross, and we pay PAYGW out of it, and we pay super on it. She's also been getting a first aid allowance, which previously was going into gross, and again, it's got PAYG and super. Then she's had a laundry allowance over the threshold, $55. Again, it was being all gone into gross. So her total gross was $1,728 that she was getting. Her PAYGW, $414. She got a net pay of $1,300, and she had super of the $172.80, because again, I've got those little ticks on, or little crosses on the super. Now, for STP2, the weekly wage is still going into gross, just the same. That's not changing. The first aid allowance is going into tasks, but she's still getting the PAYG, or it's still being included to work out the PAYGW. She's still going to get super on it. The same with the laundry allowance over the threshold. That's now going into a laundry allowance category, and again, the PAYGW and super. So she's still getting exactly the same pay. Nothing is changing. The PAYGW, the tax that you've taken out, is still going into the same area. And the superannuation that she's getting, again, is still going into the same area and is still the same amount. None of that has changed. You've just moved two of the allowances into their own little section. So again, once you've worked it out, with your employees, you might find that it's not a very big informational change. It's just the first time that you use a new category, you may have to sort of, think and make sure that you've got the right one. Here's another one. Here's Jeffrey. He's actually got director's fees, which we were putting into gross with the monthly salary as well, the tax, etc., the superannuation. Again, he's not getting anything different in his actual money in his hand. All that is happening is that on this STP2 reporting, we're now going to report the director's fees in their own section. And you'll see the payslip is there, and the payslip is going to be defining that. And again, you may need to talk to your employees. Just let them know that they might see a bit more detail on their payslip than they're used to, again, because all of that information is there. So again, you see you've got ordinary earnings, director's fees, the categories are there and separate, but they're going to be the same each time. And then on the left-hand side, the year-to-date figures, and the year-to-date figures is what is going to be reported to the ATO. So using the IMSTP, and again, you may know all of this. In fact, I might not be telling you anything new, only about the categories. So we'll have a look and see. So here we've got the STP IM, or the IMSTP. I should have had that round the other way. And this is where you normally go. Again, none of that has changed. You're still going to payroll. You're still going to payroll events, or you're still going to employees if you're onboarding a new employee. So obviously the first step that you need to do is to create or add each employee. And you'll see when you click on the employee, it takes you to that employee screen. All of your employees that you've already got in the system are listed there. And if you want to create new, you can either go to the plus sign, or you can go to the red button that says plus new employee. So when you do that, this is where you'll see where I'm a bit hesitant because I don't have all the information, where it's a lot quicker if you've gone through before you set somebody up and have all of that information. Because you'll see here, I don't know what to call myself, and I decided I wasn't going to be as old as I really am, which meant I was a bit confused about how old I should be. And you fill in all of the appropriate information that you have. But what you'll see is the next line, once we get the date that I started work, resident or non-resident working holiday, that comes off your TFN declaration. Am I full-time or part-time? That comes off the TFN declaration. And then what sort of wages or what sort of tax am I going to be taxed? Regular, and that's probably most people on the salary and wages. And then the income stream type. Am I salary and wages? Am I closely held? That sort of information. So again, then the ATO knows that if you are doing closely held, then you might not be doing them as regular as your other employees, because again, there are the concessions to do them quarterly. Obviously, you need to put in all of their contact details, and once you do this once, you don't have to do it again. Then you go and put their bank details in. I didn't put any because I didn't have any pretend bank details. And then onboarding, what sort of information do I need? Now, a lot of that information, again, is going to come from what you've already done. You've already decided if they're a resident or not. You've already said whether they're full-time, what sort of wages, salary and wages they're doing. You need to tick here, are they going to claim their tax-free threshold, or do they have a HECS debt, that sort of thing. You know, has the employee given you the information? Well, that's just a standard one. And then when you go back and you go save, now it also won't let you save it unless you fill out all of the information. So it's not likely that you will forget that, but it's also the opportunity to make sure you have all the information together when you first go to set them up, because that's going to stop you getting frustrated and going, oh, why can't I finish this? So do, again, I'm really encouraging you to collate all of the employees' information together so you have it there to put it on the system. So here, for example, I have gone to Jeffrey again, and I have perhaps want to change some information. I've either got new information, maybe he's changed status, something like that. Now, when I'm in the employees, I click on his name. You'll see on the right-hand side, it comes up with the overview, the transaction, the pay template, the superannuation, and then, of course, we've got some buttons. And so this is where I can edit that information. So if I need to change the information that I've got there, you know, I've got his address wrong or his telephone number or something else I need to change, I just click on edit, and that similar screen that we just previously saw is available for me to go in and change what I need to do. So for example, if I went to the employment status and he's gone from full-time to part-time, I'd be able to change that. Or if he's, I don't know, become a non-resident, again, then we would be able to change this employment category and the salary stream, that sort of information, so you can change that. Now, if I wanted to change his onboard information, which in the little one, the screen we saw before that was moving, it actually was in this section here, and you'll see that it's not there anymore. So what I need to do is actually go back to my first employees screen, and this time I want to hit onboard. And then it comes up with that same information again and again if I need to change something. So again, I haven't ticked that he wants to claim the tax-free threshold. Perhaps I forgot to do that. I can come back in here and tick that and, you know, obviously edit what I need to and save it. Now, again, when I'm setting him up, if I have all of the information, what sort of thing he gets paid, what sort of allowances he get and how much they are, I can set up a pay template. And again, in this that little section there, you've got the overview, the transactions, the pay template, the superannuation. So the overview is what we're looking at. The transactions, of course, is all the transactions that you eventually do for him. The pay template is what we're going to go in and we can set up again to save us having to type the same information each time. And the superannuation is you can put all their superannuation details in. So here is the pay template, and you'll see that I've got wages and I've got allowances there, and I've got deductions and superannuation. So I've got all of those areas, and you'll see that all along there's little add buttons, and I'm able to add categories as I go along. So if I need, as you saw before where I had two different task allowances, I'm able to keep adding those categories. Now, this is where when you go to the top one, which was the wages and salary, again, you'll see there's ordinary earnings. There's 4 areas in this: wages and salary, overtime's earnings, bonuses and commissions, and director's fees. So I can pick these different areas that Jeffrey is likely to receive, and I'm able then to decide on, is it going to be a fixed amount or is it going to be a calculated amount as we go along. So in this first one, I've actually got his director's fees and his ordinary earnings as fixed amounts, and I have actually put the amount in. So each week, each month, each fortnight, whatever it is, this is what he's getting as the director's fees and ordinary earnings. Now, director's fees might only be once a year, you know, when the accountant tells you what to do. But again, you can set up that template. Or if instead of the fixed amount, I actually, in the ordinary earnings, I want to put hours. I want to put that he's going to work for 38 hours, a normal full-time week. He's going to work 38 hours, and I'm going to pay him a rate of $43.11. And you'll see it works out slightly differently. So again, this is where you might want the difference between the fixed rate or the hourly rate, depending on, of course, who it is that you're paying. So here I'm going to do a pay run. And so what I'm going to do, instead of actually typing all of that information in already, I'm going to tick rollover. And rollover means it's going to use information from a previous pay run that I've done and bring forward that information so that I don't have to type in things that, you know, I don't want to each time. So you'll now see that it's a draft, and I'm going to open it. Comes up with the pay slip in a draft, and I'm going to edit it. And this is where I'm going to change what I need to change for this pay. So for this pay, I'm leaving the ordinary hours earning, but he has decided, Lim has decided to have a paid leave, and he's going to cash out 2 weeks paid leave because he's got too much leave. So I've said, please take some money, and I am going to pay him 2 weeks wages for that. Again, I've ticked the PAYG and the super. Now, he's also decided that he's going to put $500 into salary sacrifice each week. So I've added that. And I can, of course, add anything else that I want. And here I'm going to put a qualification, and I've put first aid, but in fact, it should be a task allowance. So here again is where you would be able to go back, and if I haven't sent it off, I obviously could change that to a tasks allowance. Got the superannuation guarantee, it's got all of the wages, and it's worked out the tax, and now I'm going to save those changes for that pay run. Now it comes up with the pay slip, tells me that I haven't lodged it, and so that is sitting there. So again, this would be where I can have a chance to go back and check and, you know, make sure that I've got all the information that I need to. And when it does report, it is going to send that year-to-date wages. So here you'll see mark as posted. And so what you need to do there is a red button there to mark as posted. Now I'm happy with it. I'm going to prepare it for lodging. So I tick it, hit prepare, and it comes up with these 3 screens. So the first screen is telling me how many people I'm including. The second screen is the detail, which again I can view. And the third screen then is the declaration. So I can just immediately lodge if I'm the business owner. If I am someone else who needs authority, I can actually validate, I can actually send it to the person who I need to get the authority to lodge it with. Once I've lodged it, I hit OK, it comes back up here and it is processing. Now, once it's processing, I then get an acknowledgement from the ATO, tells me what time that it was lodged, who submitted it, how, you know, if they accepted it, if, you know, there was nothing wrong with it, and as it says on the side there, receipt. And then this is the report that is attached to that, so that I can keep them in my records for me to know that this wage went through and was reported for STP purposes to the ATO. Tiana, is there any other questions that we would like to talk about at this point?
There was a question from the attendees coming from Maryland. Are the apprentices recorded differently?
They actually are recorded differently in the beginning, in the fact that you are specifying some changes up the top. But other than that, if they're getting gross, if they're getting allowances, then no, they're reported all the same, unless Sandeep wants to contradict me, but that's my understanding.
Yeah, that's right, Tim. So when they're setting up the employee based on the TFN declaration, once after declaring, they can continue to have like a normal gross.
Right. So it's very simple, really, again, that you don't have to keep learning different things to do for different people. You just need to set them up, like everything, you need to set it up correctly and it flows beautifully. So Tiana, anything else that we...
I have a questions for my own.
Yep.
So I've been reporting SDP or my payroll to the ATO. With changing to SDP2, do I have to do the TFN declarations for my existing employees again, because previously, you know, they were not notified whether they're part-time or full-time, as you indicated. So do I have to do the TFN declarations again, or the onboarding section?
It would depend on how long they've worked for you. And the only reason I say that is because the TFN form has changed. I don't know how long ago, but it didn't used to have part-time, full-time, casual on it. And if you had that information from their onboarding or their contract where you've told them these are your work hours and this is you're going to be casual and etc., then not necessarily. But if the latest version of the tax file declaration actually does have that part-time, full-time, casual, so it might just depend on how long since they're employed. Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay, that seems to be all the questions for now. Any other questions from the floor?
Okay, don't think so. All right, so,
Cool.
So now let's talk about CSV files. So you want to import, again, it's about cutting down work and you bringing in a CSV file for STP phase 2. Now, again, I've made some assumptions about you guys in the fact that if you've been using STP1 and you thought you'd use the CSV files, you've probably tried it in STP1 as well. So it's very similar to what you have been doing. Again, as I keep saying, the only thing that really changes is there's a bit more breakup and a bit more information. So if you're going to import a file into STP2, this to me is my checklist of how I would do it. Seems like a lot of actions, but some of them you will do really quickly, and once you've done the first one, you know, you won't notice it. So you need to obviously get the information into the CSV file, and it looks like a Excel spreadsheet, which is exactly, you know, what it is, just saved as a CSV file. It does need to have columns where, you know, in certain places, in certain orders, and we will get to where you will find that. Obviously, you're going to import it, you're going to drag and drop it and do those things. But let's do the screens to show you this process of these 12 steps. And, you know, as I said, some of them aren't quite as complicated as maybe that checklist looks like. But that is the CSV file there. So it's a sample file. So you go to your pay run and you click on the import pay run CSV. And so you'll see there, it's on the left, the right-hand side of the top of the screen, and you go import pay run. I mean, that's exactly what it says. So that's what we're going to do. When we click on that, this is what the screen that appears. Now, this is where it gives you, it says if you'd like to look at download a sample file, and I would absolutely encourage you to download the sample file. Not yet though. Wait until GovReports turns on STP2, because the sample file that is there at the moment, I have looked, the sample file is there is for STP1, because all of the people at the moment are still using STP1. So that's what the file is. But when when GovReports turns on STP2, you can go there and look at the sample. And I must say, I look at the sample so that I get a bit more, it seems to me to make more sense to me if I can see information in it. So then you'll see that the next line says, click here to download import specification document. So that's going to be the document that tells you all of what they call as mapping. And basically it's like PAYGW goes to PAYGW. Salary sacrifice goes to, you know, which one. So it shows you that information. But normally if you've got your file already, then you come to this screen and you just drag and drop the file. Now, obviously you need to keep those files somewhere so you know which one you're using. Make sure you name it. You know, I usually date it so that, you know, put it like, you know, the 12th of December 21, so that I know which file I want to pick up. You'll see that then there's a next button. So once you drag and drop it, The system itself looks and see whether it likes what it's seeing, and if it does, it lets you keep going, and if it doesn't, we will come to what it does when it doesn't like what you're doing. So if it's fine with it, it goes next, and it shows you the mapping. And this is where you might go, oh my goodness me. But I am sure as you get used to using it, you will see where that information is. And you'll also see that most of these are already assigned. It was, I mean, I was very lucky. The guys at GovReport gave me this sample one to do, and of course it was all mapped correctly. But I'm sure they will help you if you have issues with this. But it gives you the document so that you can see if there is anything missing, and you can, hopefully fix it. You'll also see then there's an import button. So once you're happy with it, so mapping may be required, but I hope you get it in the first time. So then it comes up with this screen and tells you how many records it's going to import and whether it likes them. And you go, yeah, that's really good. Okay, cool. And it's going to import it as a draft. So it's not importing it as lodged or anything like that. It's only importing it as a draft. You can change everything about it once you get it into the system. So you'll see there that it comes up, and I'm sorry that these screens are so small. It's just quite a lot of information wide. So but you'll see here, it comes in as a grey, as a draft, and it comes in here as not lodged. It also means that you need to mark it as posted, which I've got to get the next order. But this is also where, and I've just enlarged the top to show you where the draft and the not lodged. And then as you'll see on the left-hand side, it's the red button, mark as posted. So basically you tick the people that you want to be included, that you've brought in through your CSV file, and you mark as posted. Once you mark it as posted, again, you've then got this pay slip, can't say that today, pay slip as a draft. And of course, all of that is changeable because it is a draft. So you can go in there. But again, if you look at these pay slips and there, somebody gets the same pay every week, week in, week out, you're able to come in here, look at that and go, yep, that's fine, and immediately go and lodge it if you've got all of the information. So once you're happy with what the information says for each of the employees that you've brought in through the CSV, you then go to prepare STP. So again, it was on that mark, the pay run, where you had it mark as posted. In that same bar, it says prepare STP. So when you go to prepare STP, this is the first screen that comes up, and this is the reporting information. Tells you the period that it's reporting on, tells you how many employees that are being reported on, tells you the gross payments, the PAYG, if there's any child support there, and the date of the payment. Because of course, remember, we are making sure that we are telling the ATO on the day that we pay them or prior to the day that we pay them. So you then hit next, and it moves across to employees, and it shows you the detail of all of the employees that you have included in this, and it goes right across the screen, which I didn't thought I'd make it larger this time. And again, you would have the opportunity to go and look and see and view those again in case they'd changed from when you had just checked them 10 minutes ago. It then goes to the declaration again. And again, if you aren't the authority on who lodges it, so maybe you're the bookkeeper and you get the business owner to make sure that they have a look at it, you have that opportunity under More to go and get them to look at the document and give you authority. You can even get it signed if you're doing it in a different place. So for example, if you're down in lockdown and you're in your home office and they're in their home office, you're able to send that for a signature so that they can sign it. again, of course, you could also, post this information to the accountant and ask the accountant to, or the BAS agent to lodge it if that's what you would like. Otherwise, you can just hit the lodge button and you come back with those same screens before, the receipt and the printout of what you have lodged. So this one, I'm afraid the screen isn't as good, but I wanted to just give you the impression. So when you hit mark as posted, basically once you hit OK, it comes back and it changes from draft to posted, and then you just click them again to prepare your STP. And again, it's a very quick process once you've done all the work by getting their wages into the system. Again, you've got your reporting information, you've got your employees, and again, you can view that information. Then you've got the declaration, whoever is reporting. And again, as I said before, you can go and get a signature if you need to validate it for somebody else to give you the authority to lodge. And you can come back and it's lodged. So that's using the CSV import. And as I said, just wait to get the new version of it till GovReports releases the STP2. Now, what happens if it doesn't like what you're trying to import? So here's an import fail that I did, and it tells me that there's 2 records and they've failed my 2 records, but you'll see there that it says click here to view log details. So when I click there, I then get a report which tells me the business, the ABN, etc., and it tells me why they failed. And why it failed was I tried to bring in a payment that I'd already brought in and lodged. And so the system is smart enough to go, no, I'm sorry, you've already brought these people in and you've lodged them and you've done the thing. So it is just, yeah, so it is there, and I really like that. So yes, okay. So my summary is that the way you submit doesn't change. So if you're already doing that, then you don't have to learn that again. The categories that you are reporting on are absolutely the same as they previously were. They just maybe get reported differently. Their allowances have their own categories. Tax and super obligations remain exactly the same. The salary sacrifice is again reported differently, but the obligation, of course, to pay that when you pay the ordinary super still remains. Again, you still need to report on the day that you pay, that you do the pays, or previously. Your BMS ID is still the same from STP1. Your rollover from previous lodgements is still available. So again, I find that a really helpful tool just to bring in the people that I want and then change the information that I need to. And then our end of year, which we of course we've got 6 months luckily before we need to do that, that isn't currently changing. So Tiana, is there any other questions or anything else that you guys would like to add? Have I lost you, Tiana?
I was on mute.
I thought the weather had come down to you by now.
No, apologies. Okay, we don't have any questions at the moment from the floor, but we're waiting for that. Now is the time for, if anyone else have any questions, now is the time to post it, and so we can ask, get Deb to answer the questions. In the meantime, Deb, I do have a question. So if if the employees now has job status change from say casual or part-time to full-time, you mentioned earlier it's probably be best to do a tax file number declarations, the new one, so that we can take in the new categories of for the job categories for the employee. Does that mean to also is that we also change the payroll number for this employee?
I don't know whether you guys think that's a good idea, but I wouldn't change the payroll category. I wouldn't change the payroll ID, But the reason that I suggest is having the new tax file declaration ticked is because if you're giving them a contract to say now you're full-time, or you're giving them other paperwork between the two of you that agrees that everybody, you know, everybody's on the same page, that's sort of where I'm coming from. And sometimes people don't want to go through all of that. They say, no, you're full-time. And so the TFN deck is, to me, the sort of easiest way to get to make sure that you've got it in your folder to say, here, yeah, look, this is the date that we changed, especially if you need to go back, especially if you need to go, say, from casual to part-time when they started getting entitlements instead of their loading. That's the sort of, I guess that's my thinking behind that. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. And does it mean, you know, because we're changing, so from existing that I have the employee as casual, and now I'm going in, you know, now they're going full-time. Does it, you know, if you're saying don't change the payroll number, means that we have to change the onboarding information of the employees where they are changing from casual to full-time?
Yes, well, that's what I would have thought. And again, obviously, Sandeep, and you can give me the advice if you think that's not the right thing to do. But I would have thought, because otherwise they're going to end up with 2 income statements and that sort of information, whereas you want them as one person. But so you go into the onboard information and change, actually you go into their information, their overview, and change them there from full-time or casual to full-time, whatever is appropriate.
Yeah, so you're right, Deb. So you don't want to change the payroll ID when you're changing the employment has been, category has been changed. So if it will end up in having 2 different submission to the ATO, and the previous one requires the finalization. So when the employment category changes, you can continue to change the employee details by changing the category to casual to the full-time, and you can continue to do the lodgement. From the back end, we automatically picks up the previous pay run, and we will be sending the year-to-date figures to the ATO.
And also too, because when you're, for example, if you're changing them from casual to part-time, what also tells the ATO is that you're not going to be using, if you had casual loading set up as a separate payroll category, you're not going to be using that anymore, because now you're giving them entitlements. So I would have thought another reason not to use and make them a new person. However, and maybe I'll ask Sandeep, in that case, if, for example, they left, so they decide to leave at Christmas and then they come back in March, would you still use that same ID that they had previously?
Yes, certainly they can use it.
Yeah.
It's up to them.
Yeah. So rather than start a new employee and make them have 2 income statements, you just go back to using the one you previously used.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Tiana, any other questions?
Seems like we don't have any other questions from the floor, but just to let everyone know, the webinar was recorded and will be posting on our website after today. So we just recollect the recording of the webinar, and then we'll post it on the website hopefully by tomorrow. For those that are attending the webinar today, you will get a copy of the recording, and those people that did not attend also get a copy of the recording as well. So if you do have questions, more further questions about the topic today or the SDP2, you can always reach out to us, or if you have questions directly for Deborah, just send an email to us and we'll forward to Deborah if we cannot answer it for you. Once again, thank you everyone. I know that we've run over time, and thank you for your attendance and your patience, and we look forward to servicing you in the new with SDP2 and of course ongoing. Thank you everyone. Thanks, Deborah.
Thanks everybody. Okay, bye. Now I need to turn off the recording, or do you, Tiana?
Yeah, we turn it off. Okay, cool. Thanks, Deb.
Thanks. Bye.